Aw, man. They misspelled Shia LaBeouf's face. Well, can't read that anymore. Now I gotta think of something else to do. You know, I haven't made a video in a while. I should really review something. And I think I have just the thing in mind. Preparing for the US border security test. No, stop. Don't do that. That video is awful and no one watches it and it ruins your career. Who the heck are you? I am you from the future. Wow, when did I get to look like such a colossal nerd? Joke's on you. You've always looked like a huge nerd. Oh, my feelings. What do you even want, future me? I don't know. I just didn't want you, me, whatever, to review that stupid US border security DVD. Why did you even think that was a good idea? Oh my god, oh my god, is that the Indiana Jones comic where they misspelled Shia LaBeouf's face? Yeah, I don't know, just like review a time travel game or something. I gotta get out of here, man. This time period is cursed. Game about time travel? Oh wait, I know one of those. Hold on, what are tomorrow's winning lottery numbers? Hello Internet, it is me, the E-Man, and today we're going to talk about a Back to the Future inspired indie game called No Time, where you play as a scientist with a time-traveling car that looks as close to a DeLorean as you can get without infringing on copyright. The game opens with a beautiful sunset and you standing alone next to your car on a deserted highway bridge. A short narrated tutorial teaches you the controls and basic gameplay elements, and then once that's over, you immediately begin the main story.
Great. Now put the uranium on top of the reactor chamber in the back of the car.
Now right off the bat, I absolutely adore the graphics and art style of this game. It's not cel-shaded, but it has that kind of overall aesthetic to it, which I personally find very visually pleasing. It's a great route for indie games like this to take when they don't have the budget for super realistic graphics. And I find in this case, the more simplistic look really complements this game's focus on mechanics. So once the tutorial is over and you've checked your quest log, you learn that you are a scientist who is developing a time machine, and that a shadowy organization was planning on using your time machine to commit evil throughout history itself. Now in order to circumvent this, you steal the time machine, and now that you're on the run, there's only really one logical course of action for you to take. Travel to the fantastic high-tech future of 2014. Now, once you're in the future, and you're finally able to stop gawking at those fancy hologram Burger Lord displays, you decide the first thing you should do is look up your old friend E.R. Author, your fellow scientist from back in the day. Or like 2 minutes ago for you, because, you know, time is relative. Okay, now this is the part of the review where I should probably disclose that I received my Steam copy of the game for free. Partially as a thank you for my continued support of the game on YouTube through its pre-alpha development, and also because I'm actually in the game. That's right. I'm a credited voice actor. Now when you talk to Author, who doesn't even recognize you right away, he tasks you with finding his family's long-lost golden pocket watch, so he can use his treasured family heirloom as conductive material for the weather machine that he's building. Now, trying to figure out whatever happened to the watch and then tracking it down would be a lot of effort and take a lot of hard work. So instead, we just chunk in another uranium fuel rod and transport ourselves to 1795 to go get the watch from its source. Now, you start the game with a fission reactor in the back of your car, which drains 1 uranium fuel rod for every time travel jump you make. You also start with 4 uranium fuel rods in the trunk of your car, so you're not going to run out right away. However, while uranium fuel rods are widely available in the distant future of 2014, they're not so readily available in other time periods, so you want to make sure that you never get stuck in like 1037 with no way of getting back home, because otherwise you've just soft-locked your game. You can save and load at any time from the inside of your car, so if something like that does happen, you should hopefully be able to recover without losing too much progress. So once you arrive in 1795, you meet Arthur's distant relative, who informs you that the golden pocket watch has just been stolen by a group of bullies, and he tasks you with going to retrieve it. Now you might think that referring to the criminals as bullies sounds kind of weird, and instead referring to them as bandits would be much more appropriate, but I think this is probably trying to allude to Back to the Future films and the different iterations of Biff and his cronies, but I'm just guessing here. Now before he sends you on your way to confront the bullies, Arthur's ancestor gives you a club to fight them with, so you know what that means. It's time to talk about the combat. There isn't really a whole lot to say. The melee combat's incredibly minimalistic. You have a basic swing attack with the club, and that's pretty much it. You just try to get close enough to the bully to hit them without them being able to punch you back. You can also punch at any time when you don't have the club equipped, but it's inferior in every way. Enemies' health is clearly displayed above their heads, and you have a health bar and a food bar on your heads-up display. Your health regenerates when your food bar is full. Fighting the bullies is pretty easy for a first combat encounter, with the only one that could prove to be a challenge being the bully leader, who's armed with a revolver. All you really gotta do is spin around him and get a couple good whacks in, and once he's down, he drops the golden pocket watch. Now we can go back to the future and present the watch to Arthur. He rewards us with a pile of cash and asks us to come check out his fancy experimental weather machine on top of the hill out back. When we get there, he asks us to drop the watch in the machine so it can start up, and it promptly explodes in his face. But he's pretty okay with it, so all's well that ends well. Now, at this part of the game, one of its coolest aspects comes into play. Now, you could do exactly what we just did, or alternatively, you could just give the watch straight back to Arthur's ancestor in 1795, and in doing so, you create a second timeline where the watch never becomes lost and Arthur never has any reason to send you back to go get it. So when you return to 2014 and ask Arthur about the weather machine, he gets confused because he doesn't remember asking you to go look for the watch, because he always had the watch, so he created the weather machine years earlier and is now onto a separate project. Now, if you choose to do this, the overall story isn't really affected and doesn't particularly change, and all that really happens mechanically is you get paid less by Arthur's ancestor, and you miss the whole weather machine debacle on top of the hill. But just the fact that you can change the timeline so dynamically is one of my favorite parts of this game. Once we get back to Arthur's shop, he asks us for our help with his newest invention idea, the handheld electromagnetic accelerator, a gun that fires plasma bolts. He needs us to round up all the necessary materials to build the prototype. Most of the components are pretty common and can be bought cheaply at the local 612 convenience store. However, for the base of the gun, we're going to need to find ourselves a 19th century revolver. Now, we could hop in the time machine and travel all the way back to the 1800s and find a revolver, but that seems like a lot of effort, so let's just buy one on eBay and be done with it. Now, there's a lot of stuff in this game you're going to need to buy, and in order to do that, you're going to need some money. Now, there's a few ways to make money in the game besides the main story quests. You can get a part-time job, like being a blacksmith in the Old West, or flipping burgers, the local burger lord. I don't know what it is, but there's something about those low-polygon burgers that just give me such a craving. Burger. It was free root beer day. Where was I? Oh yeah, ways to make money in the game. Alternatively, you can also bake pizzas at the pizzeria across town. Low polygon pizza. Anyway, now that we have all the components necessary to build the electromagnetic accelerator, we can return to Arthur's shop. There he gives us a Mr. Crafty, so we can actually build the gun. And here we discover No Time's limited crafting mechanics. There are several items you can craft throughout the game using basic materials, and in order to actually do the crafting, you're going to need a Mr. Crafty. You place the necessary items on the ground next to it, open the menu on the Mr. Crafty, select what you want to build, and there you go, item crafted. Now the Mr. Crafty is obviously a key item, so if you misplace the one that Arthur has given you, don't worry. He's licensed its production, so you can just buy it from one of the vendors. It's very simplistic, and you don't have to use it very often, but I actually kind of like the Mr. Crafty mechanic. It's not the most useful, but it also doesn't feel tacked on. Now that our plasma gun is built, Arthur asks us to try it out on his training robot he has in the backyard. The gun can fire one powerful blast of plasma before it needs its cartridge refilled, although there is an upgrade through the Mr. Crafty that allows you to fire 3 shots before having to reload. Anyway, now that we have an actual gun, we should be able to easily fend off any enemies we encounter. Besides the 18th century bullies, the only other enemies you'll encounter are the Time Agents. They're the main antagonists of the game and are employed by the shadowy organization you stole the time machine from at the beginning. These guys are tough, attack in numbers, and are all armed with guns. Now they serve as enemies throughout the story missions, but they also act as the time police, teleporting in anytime you break a law of time, such as driving your car in front of a cowboy. You can tell when you have a time bounty by the little clock symbol that appears in your HUD. Now besides that, the only other enemy you'll really encounter are these cute little guys, the Cocoa Crabs. They live in garbage and the sewers, and while they might be a formidable opponent in hand-to-hand combat, they stand absolutely no chance against a hot accelerated blast of plasma. Oh my god, that's amazing! So the next task that Author has for us is to go back to 1989, to the old laboratory that we used to work at together. It turns out that after we stole the time machine and escaped, the time agents came in and began stealing all of Author's research, and he wants us to go back and prevent that from ever happening. So we go back, mess with the timeline, save past young Author from the time agents, make a movie reference, and then go back to 2014. Okay, so at this point the game basically forces the player to carry out some mandatory upgrades. When you return to Author, he asks you to get the hover conversion for your car, which gives you the ability to fly, and then once you've done that, he asks you to upgrade to a fusion reactor to replace your current fission reactor. Now the hover conversion has to be straight up bought for $500, so if you don't have that, you're going to have to grind a little bit of cash at your side jobs. But the fusion reactor can just be built from some common objects down at the 612. And instead of using uranium rods, the fusion reactor uses fusion cells, and can be recharged, unlike the uranium rods, which once used have to be discarded. Now the controls for flying in the car do take some getting used to, but once you've gotten the hang of it, it ends up feeling pretty smooth, and flying is quite enjoyable. It also gives you a great bird's eye view over the entire map. Now, when you first look at the game's map, it's easy to think that it's quite small and fairly limiting. And to be fair, it is pretty small compared to a lot of other open world games, even other open world indie games. But what you don't realize right away is that the map is totally different depending on what time period you're visiting. And there's several different time periods with very radically different town layouts. It makes the game way larger than you first think it is, and I really love that design choice. Now after you've done all that upgrading, Author tells you that he's figured out that the time agents are abducting people from across time, and he sends you to save a 1940s journalist that he's identified as a target. So when we arrive in the 1940s to warn the journalist, a bunch of time agents show up and we engage in an epic battle. Once we defeat all the time agents and convince the journalist to flee the town for his life, we pick up the weird orb thing he's been staring at and bring it back to show Author. So we take the strange device back to Author, and he says that it looks like some kind of time portal signal communication beacon, and it's probably part of a larger network that the time agents have set up across different time periods. Okay, so this next part is definitely the one part of the game I don't like. I'm really not a fan of this bit. You have to search for these hidden time beacons throughout 3 different time periods, and all you have to do it with is like a hot or cold little tracker device. I just find it more tedious and obnoxious than anything. It's not really fun, and it really slows down the pacing of the game, I find. I swear, it took me over half an hour to find all 3 of these things, and that's only because I remembered one of the positions from playing the pre-alpha. Anyway, every time you pick up one, a couple time agents appear to try to stop you, but they're relatively easily defeated. And once we've got all 3, it's back to 2014 to bring them to Author. And once we present the 3 devices to Author, it triggers a comic book style cutscene where he cracks one open with a hammer, only to discover it has a tracking device in it. I really do like the comic book style art used for the final cutscene of Chapter 1. I think it was a great way to make the game's cutscenes unique and interesting instead of just rendering them in-game. Once the cutscene ends, a swarm of time agents arrive and Author's shop goes into lockdown. And the first episode ends on a cliffhanger, with you and Author defending his shop from the onslaught of time agents. Now, as much as I really do enjoy playing this game, there are a few small criticisms I have on some minor things that I would like to change. It'd be nice to be able to reload the gun without having to fully empty it first. I would definitely like to have more than one save slot. I think that would really help with experimentation. I'd like to see combat improved in general. It's not the main focus of the game, but in its current state it's pretty clunky, although I think part of that has to do with just the slow firing rate of your gun. And it would be really nice to have a proper item storage, like a chest inventory or a briefcase or something, because just having all the props bouncing around loose in the trunk of your car makes item management a little bit difficult. Overall, I think that No Time is a fun and creative game with a limited degree of replayability and some really fantastically implemented features that make it a unique and true-to-form time travel game. Now, the one thing to note about No Time is that it's being released episodically, Right now, you can buy and play episode 1 from beginning to end, with episodes 2 and 3 coming within the next year. Well, that's about all I have to say about No Time. There's lots of smaller details and little Easter eggs that I glossed over or skipped in this review, but I think the best way to experience most of those is for yourself. I definitely recommend this game. If you watched this video all the way to the end, I thank you very much for doing so. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again on the next episode real soon. Goodbye! It's a big boy gun.